everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my June 2025 reading vlog. It is currently June 24th at the time of me recording this. We are super far into the month, but obviously I needed to do an introduction before I show what I did this month. So far I have read a lot of books. As per my previous video where I read a bunch of books that were on my Goodreads TBR for the longest, I have already read 4 things, and I'm currently trying to finish off my remaining 2 books for the month. So for my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime book for this month, I am reading Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I am 2/3 of the way into it, and I don't have a lot to say about it. It is about one man who fell in love with a woman, but she does not reciprocate those feelings and ends up marrying someone else. And this guy's like a huge romantic, and he's trying for the rest of his life both to sleep around as much as possible and trying to win the girl back. Now, for the story itself, I'm not too compelled by it. The writing is really good, but otherwise I don't have a lot to say about it. You will hear any of my thoughts in my vlog, obviously. And for the other books that I have read this month, I was reading The Wolf Gift by Anne Rice at the end of that previous video, and I did not say my final thoughts. My final thoughts on this book is that it's pretty disappointing and not the usual Anne Rice writing that I am looking for. It's more by the books than what she usually does. She tried really hard to write a werewolf story where the werewolf did positive things and felt good being a werewolf, and he was not evil. This came at a time when Anne Rice wanted to stop writing about evil, so she didn't write about ghosts, vampires, demons, or anything. Her werewolves are a positive force in this novel. They do talk about the nature of evil, but she dismisses it immediately because that was no longer something she wanted to write about. So at least that was a positive of this book. It was a positive werewolf depiction, and I do enjoy that. For the rest of the book, though, it was pretty boring to read about. For some reason, she fixated on all the characters making salad all the time, which, good for them, I guess, but it was just something that was never really discussed in Anne Rice's writing because her vampires don't eat food. So I guess I was just a little bit thrown off by the fact that the werewolves were talking about eating salad all the time. So, like, good for them, I guess. So those are my final thoughts on The Wolf Gift. I didn't think it was very good. I don't think it is Anne Rice's best, but I do appreciate that it is a positive take on a werewolf story. I also read other books for that video. I read Gotham by Gaslight by Brian Augustyn, Michael Mignola, P. Craig Russell, David Hornung. Comic book about Batman trying to solve the Jack the Ripper case. Gotham is set at the same time period as England at the time, and was a very interesting little otherworld story. I also read Batman and Dracula, Red Rain by Doug Moench and Kelley Jones, and that one was really exciting. It was Batman fighting Dracula in the 90s, and he ends up at the end turning into a vampire. So it's another otherworld story where Bruce has to deal with being a vampire. I have not read the following issues. I just read the one where he fought Dracula, and I really enjoyed it. I also read and finished An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson, which is a sort of Carmilla retelling set in an all-women's college in the 1960s, and they are dealing with a teacher, and they're dealing with their own rivalry, and they are dealing with the supernatural world at large. I was a little bit disappointed by this book and didn't really enjoy it, and it is not my favorite S.T. Gibson. Now, for my other book that I am reading this month, I have started Eileen by Otessa Moshfegh, which was her first novel. It is about a young girl who works at a boys' penitentiary, like a teenage boys' penitentiary, and that's all I've gotten into so far, but I do know that she meets another woman and gets swayed and is trying to leave the town that she lives in because she lives with her alcoholic father and she's not very happy. She is a very unlikable protagonist. The way that she talks both about herself and others, it is through hindsight. It is very like, oh god, I would not want to hang out with this person. So far I am getting into the novel, and I'm not very far into it, but it is a short novel, so I hope to finish that one this month as well. Now, I've already had a very, very exciting month. I've traveled to Toronto to go to my very first Renaissance Fair, and that was very, very exciting. So you're going to see all of that now. And stay tuned for my final wrap-up, which will happen at the end.
bird of prey in the wild before? Chances are, doesn't matter what they were or what they were doing, they were probably by themselves. Birds of prey are solitary. Okay, so he is a species of owl that is a pretty impressive bird, but I'm just going to get ahead of this right now, because a lot of times people come up to me afterwards and they say, hey, like, from a distance, Brett's kind of funny looking. So we're going to clear the birds, like I mentioned, very important to the history of falconry. But, like I said, she needs a couple of minutes to get kind of used to where she is and all that kind of stuff. 2-year-old male steppe eagle, okay? This is my steppe eagle. Personally, I rather think of him instead as the eagle who stepped up. No, in this case, steppe is spelled S-T-E-P-P-E, which you might recognize for the mountain range for which this bird is named. Advancing the human race, and so thanks to eagles, yeah, we were able to do very well for ourselves. We were able to start advancing ourselves. And so they have been very well respected all throughout the ages. There are many countries that have named eagles their
I'm going to take this torch, cram it into my mouth, blows my mouth over the business end, cutting off the oxygen. If I do it correctly, the torch will go out. My friends, there is a hidden danger to fire eating. This is kerosene. It's toxic, a carcinogen. Every time I put a torch in my mouth, I swallow kerosene. Kerosene builds up in my stomach, my lungs, my kidneys, my fallopian tubes, and my liver. So, when I put the torch in my mouth, do not worry that I will burn myself. But remember, my stomach, lungs, kidneys, my fallopian tubes, my liver, I am poisoning myself to death for your entertainment. The flaming hot torch, the soft, delicate mouth. Hi, Joel.
So, before we begin the show, please make sure that ready for us to do the show.
Whip these people into a frenzy.
I think they're right on the end.
These people.
Right on the end.
Scoffed. A goddess with a pony? But Wilson is no ordinary beast. He is swifter than mockery, braver than doubt, and more loyal than any warforged Spartan.
Female extreme jouster, Team Fiona!
Alright, here we are finally at the wrap up for the month. So for this month, I only read 6 books, and of course 4 of those books were in my previous video, but I am still going to wrap up my final thoughts on all of them right here. So for my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster book, I read Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and it is unfortunately only getting 3 stars from me. While I think think that the writing is incredibly beautiful, and I think Marquez is a wonderful novelist. I just was not really compelled by the story. I didn't really think that the man trying to chase Fermina was really all that interesting. I actually preferred the descriptions of who she eventually married and their marital issues and the way that they developed their relationship. I believe that is the point of the book, that being a huge like romantic gesture, romantic feelings, and decades of pining isn't the same as building a foundation for a relationship. And I just think that this is not the kind of story for me, though I do think it is very well written. Next, I read An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson, and this is another 3-star from me. While I think it is interesting to set a Carmilla retelling in a female college in the 1960s and having their relationship develop in a way that is pretty subversive, I just think that what they did with the professor and what they did with the rest of the plot wasn't as interesting as the build-up, and I found myself just not really connecting to it as I think that I should. As I said in my previous video, I think it just skewed a little bit too young in the writing, despite some of the themes of the novel and what happens in the novel. And I don't think this is an incredibly terrible book. I just think this book is my least favorite so far of the S.T. Gibson catalog, which is totally fine. I would probably recommend it as a sort of interesting and unique Carmilla retelling, however. Next, I read Gotham by Gaslight, which I think was a really interesting Otherworlds issue where Batman is trying to solve the Jack the Ripper case. I think the color palette of this comic is really interesting, and I am glad to have read this issue. It has been recommended to me by a few people over the years, so I'm glad that I finally got to it. And I think it is an interesting way to put Bruce in Gotham into this time period, and I enjoyed it very much. So 3 stars for Gotham by Gaslight. Next, I read Batman and Dracula Red Rain by Doug Moench and Kelley Jones, and once again, it's another 3-star. I think that is the only rating I'm giving out this month. As I have said before, it is an interesting little issue where Batman fights Dracula, and he has this whole storyline connected to that, and in the end, Bruce ends up becoming a vampire in order to destroy Dracula, and I think it is a very, very interesting little tale. I love when Batman gets all horror, and I love that they referenced Dracula, so that was another fun little issue. Oh, I stand corrected about my rating system for the month. The Wolf Gift by Anne Rice gets 2 stars from me. While I appreciate the method of making the werewolf myth and the werewolf story more of a positive one, where the person who is afflicted with werewolfism is loving it, enjoys it, just wants to find some answers as to the origin, is curious and open and romantic, and really, really enjoying the process of killing evildoers and the process itself of turning into a wolf, I just think that the writing is not the typical Anne Rice fare, and I had been wanting her to get into the flowery, the dramatic, the historical, just her typical stuff that she had written with the Vampire Chronicles. But I understand she was in a different period of her life and how she felt and how she wrote. She was a bit older when she wrote this, so it's totally fine to do something that's a bit more by the books and more publisher friendly, I guess, given her past. But it was just not the story for me. However, as a unique werewolf story in itself, I think that the methodology she chose and the way that she told the story was very interesting. So while I didn't enjoy the process of reading it entirely, if someone is into werewolf stories, I would actually recommend that they check this out because it skews so different from typical modern werewolf stories as well as werewolf mythology. And the final book that I read for this month was Eileen by Otessa Moshfegh. This is my first Otessa Moshfegh. I have yet to read any of her other stories, especially the big popular one, My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I believe this was her first published novel, and I think it's all right. I know that it is a movie now, so I might want to check that out because I like Anne Hathaway. However, I think that the story is just a little bit lacking because it is pretty short. I understand that the main character, Eileen, is supposed to sort of be unlikable on purpose, and she is telling the story through hindsight, so she really is beating herself up for the way that she thought and the way that she acted. However, her life is very difficult, so I get why she would be a very, very unlikable person. However, I just don't think that this was enough of a story, you know? Like, I don't know why it needed to be told, per se. It is just a week in her life, meeting an older woman who works at the penitentiary named Rebecca, and the fallout that comes from that, eventually making her leave her town for good. So it is just like a short little vignette, a little tale, and it's not sticking with me in my mind. It was just all right. So once again, 3 stars for Eileen by Otessa Moshfegh. And that's it. That was my reading month. A little bit of a slog, if I say so myself. I really hope to read something more exciting next month. However, I did try this month. I did a challenge and I was busy, so I couldn't really dig into my reading as much as I normally would. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.